And let's talk about Ukraine. Here's a recent headline from Reuters. Putin says Russia may have to make Ukraine deal one day, but partners cheated in the past. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Russia would likely have to reach agreements regarding Ukraine in the future, but felt betrayed by the breakdown of the Minsk agreements. And what
explain that. We were just stalling for time.
Well, we're going to hear that. Putin said Germany and France, which brokered ceasefire agreements in the Belarusian capital Minsk between Ukraine and Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine in 2014 and 2015, had betrayed Russia and were now pumping Ukraine with weapons. And what Putin's talking about is, in 2014, you had a U.S.-backed coup in Ukraine. Covered that a lot here on the Jimmy Dore Show. And after that, ethnic Russians of Ukraine who felt betrayed and felt as if their government had been overthrown in a U.S.-backed coup, they rebelled. And they rebelled because the new coup government included some fascists who wanted to basically ban Russian culture and wipe it out of Ukraine. So a war broke out, and Russia backed the rebels, and the U.S. backed the new Ukrainian government. And in 2015, something called the Minsk Accords was reached to end that war. But it didn't stop the war ultimately. And the basic bargain of the Minsk Accords was that Ukraine was going to recognize the rights of these ethnic Russians inside Ukraine in the Donbass. And in return, Donbass would be demilitarized and the war would stop. And Donbass would get some limited autonomy but stay inside of Ukraine. That was the premise of the Minsk Accords. But now Putin is pointing to this. In an interview published in Germany's Zeit magazine, former German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that the Minsk agreements had been an attempt to give Ukraine time to build up its defenses. So Angela Merkel, who helped broker Minsk, is not saying that Minsk was meant to end the war. She's saying that it was meant to give Ukraine time to build its defenses. And here's more of what Angela Merkel said. The 2014 Minsk agreement was an attempt to give Ukraine time. It also used this time to get stronger, as you can see today. The Ukraine of 2014-15 is not the Ukraine of today. In early 2015, Putin could easily have overrun them at the time. And I very much doubt that the NATO countries could have done as much then as they do now to help Ukraine. So that's Angela Merkel, who helped broker this peace deal to end the war in the Donbass that began after a U.S.-backed coup in 2014, saying that this peace deal was not meant to bring peace. It was meant to give Ukraine time to prepare for the war that we're in right now. And Merkel was backed up by the former French president, Hollande, who said the same thing. He was asked, do you also believe that the negotiations in Minsk were intended to delay Russian advances in Ukraine? And François Hollande said, yes, Angela Merkel is right on this point. So another person to make the same point is the Ukrainian president who signed Minsk. His name is Petro Poroshenko, and he also said that Minsk was not intended to make peace. It was intended to delay the war, to give Ukraine time to build up the war, to fight the rebels that Russia was backing and Russia itself. This is what Poroshenko said.
How did the negotiations in Minsk end? We achieved what we wanted. We didn't trust Putin then, and we don't now. Our task was to avert the threat or to delay the war. It was necessary to get 8 years for us to restore economic growth and build up a powerful military. This was the first task.